I think everyone can agree right now that feeding yourself and your family gets expensive really quick. And in fact, it can be very discouraging for those people who are on a fixed income or a very limited budget to find a way to feed their family healthy food, not rely on super ultra cheap processed stuff. Well, in this video, I'm here to share with y'all that there's a secret that many people do not talk about because it's a little unpopular, of how you can actually feed your family on a budget, on that fixed income that is healthy and satisfying without having to sell a kidney. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel I teach you all about real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you how to be milling your own grains, baking your own bread at home, and more. As I mentioned, this video is basically going to be sharing with y'all the secrets of how to be feeding your family well on a fixed income, limited budget without having to sacrifice both flavor and quality and all of those things that just make the food really good, and also not sacrificing your health. And there's a huge secret out there that most people just don't even mention because it's a little unpopular, and that is real whole grains. The reason this is controversial is because most people don't even know what real whole grains actually is. But what I'm talking about is typically grains that may not be able to be found in the store, but the grains that are highly nutritious. They contain 40 out of 44 essential nutrients, have the fiber, and they're so good for you, and also the ones that have really sustained humanity for thousands of years. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with y'all 5 tips for feeding your family on a budget, on that fixed income, well, where they're satisfied, it's delicious, and ultimately just ideas of how whole grains actually can help you out with your budget. Plus, I have a bonus thought. You need to stay until the end for a bonus thought that I have for y'all, just to get your brains thinking a little bit more. All right, so tip number 1, we're just gonna say this right off the bat, is the first thing that you need to really prioritize is getting you a grain mill and actually milling your grains yourself. Be baking that bread from home. You need to actually be milling your wheat. Wheat is king of the grains. It contains 40 out of 44 essential nutrients that we all need on a daily basis. And the only way that you can get that is actually you have wheat berries that you mill into flour, and that's the flour that you're using at home. Now, yes, I know first thing right off the bat that people think is I cannot afford a grain mill, because you do need a way, obviously, to grind grains into flour, and that is generally with a grain mill. So let's park it here for just a little bit, because here are the things that you need to think about when it comes to the I can't afford a grain mill type argument. Now, I know they can be expensive. They average around $350, $400 and up. So I understand for those of y'all with really small budgets, that is a lot. However, if your stove went out, how quickly would you go out to fix it? If your refrigerator went out, how quickly would you go out to replace it? If your microwave went out, how quickly would you be to replace that? And people need to be seeing a grain mill as just as essential of a kitchen appliance as your typical refrigerator, stove, microwave, those type of things. So if you put it in that light, it really helps you to prioritize your budget, to just see the importance of having a grain mill. It used to be for thousands of years, everyone knew that they had to have access to some sort of grain mill, because that is how that they can grind their grains into flour. The Bible even talks about, way back in the Old Testament, you're not allowed to take a millstone, for the upper millstone, for a pledge, because you would be taking a man's life. That's how important a grain mill is. And we really need to get that concept stuck into our brains. I guarantee you, every single one of my children, when they get married, they will be getting a grain mill. I think it's an excellent wedding gift to give to people, because I see it as a very, very important, because with your grain mill, there is life. To be able to feed real whole grains, there is life. If all that you change is just to be milling wheat and baking bread. It is a life-changing thing. It is a game changer. I've received so many testimonies from people with their health to be able to do this because, yeah, there are gluten intolerances because the bread in the store is fake and it's crap and it's cheap and it's not good to have. And this is such a game changer. But here's how it helps your budget is, first of all, the real whole grains, that whole grain bread with that wheat, it contains a ton of fiber, which keeps you full and satisfied for longer, meaning you're eating less. And also it is a more complex carbohydrate, so it's not going to be spiking your blood sugars, giving you those headaches where you're thinking like, I need something else to eat. And like I said, 40 out of 44 essential nutrients to keep you healthy, but also bread, just a simple slice of bread or a roll adds so much to a simple meal. If you've ever seen this picture up here, which we have in our living room ourselves, if you notice, soup, bread. And with real bread, you're actually getting a ton of nutrients, making this a complete meal. And that is the thing with soup and bread. Soup just can be a very cheap meal to begin with, but you add in that whole grain bread and first of all, the flavor of whole grain bread is so much better. You don't even need butter because you can dip it in your soup. And it's just adding more to satiate you with soup. I know if you've ever had soup, or I know my family, if I was to just feed them a simple soup, they're hungry in 30 minutes. But usually so long as I'm pairing it with a whole grain bread, it definitely lasts a lot longer. And so soup is a cheap meal and bread next to it just really elevates it to help it stretch even further. So not only do you have the health benefits of bread that is made from 100% freshly milled wheat, which is a huge reason alone to make sure that you consume it, but if you pair it with a more simple type meal, it helps that meal to satisfy those bellies a little bit longer, again, without spiking your blood sugar and all of those things. All right, tip number 2 is you need to be buying your grains in bulk. And I know that this can be a little bit of a catch-22 in a way, because at first you're like, oh my word, I have to spend so much more money up front to buy these grains in bulk. So as opposed to paying like $10 for like a little bag, you now have to fork out, $50 to $70 for a big 50-pound bag. And that can be a lot. It can be a lot. But if you always look at the price per pound or the price per ounce, everyone generally knows that if you buy whatever it is in bulk, overall, long term, you're saving more money. And the beauty of buying grains in bulk is that they store very well. So if you're thinking, oh my word, it's going to take me forever to go through 50 pounds of wheat, why should I even buy that much? Just know that they last so long as they're stored well. You just need a good container with a good lid to keep out bugs or pests and moisture from your grains, and then they last for a very long time. So you can comfortably know that so long as you store them well, you can buy that much knowing that they're going to be fine 6 months to a year from now. Now, here's some tips of where to be buying these grains in bulk, because especially with wheat berries, you may notice you can't just walk into Walmart or Costco and find wheat berries, and that's generally because they're not there. You generally have to buy them online. So here are my tips of where to go, especially if budget is very much on your brain. So Azure Standard definitely is one of the cheaper places to buy grains overall in bulk. And by grains, I also mean like organic grains, or at least natural ones that haven't been sprayed with glyphosate, all of that type of stuff. These are non-GMO grains. And I will say that Azure Standard probably has still to this day the best price as far as if you're ordering online in some way. And do know I will link all these places down below, or you can go to my website, grainsandgrit.com/buy grains for any coupon codes, links, anything like that of where to buy grains. But as of today, Azure Standard generally is the cheapest. Now, I will say this, full disclosure, I have been purchasing items from Azure for several years now. Oh my word, probably like almost a decade. And I have noticed in the past couple of years, basically since 2020, As far as the cleanliness of their grains, especially like their hard red, hard white, and soft white wheat, I have seen kind of mixed reviews. Personally, I have not had issues with them, but they are not ones that I'm predominantly buying my grains from at the moment or for the past few years. I have other sources that I buy. So I will say, whenever I was buying from them, especially those particular grains, I didn't have a problem with it. I have seen other people talk about the cleanliness, things like that. So just, I'm being fully honest with you, but they are at least the best price that is out there, something to keep in mind. Another thing to consider is, as far as budget goes, your modern wheats are going to be cheaper than your ancient grains, and that is your hard red, your hard white wheat, and your soft white wheat, which are the wheats that I recommend for newbies to begin with. Other places to be looking out for are, it all depends on where you live. Some people have Amish stores, grocery stores near them, or I think like Seventh-day Adventist have their type of stores where they offer wheat berries for pretty cheap. If you happen to be in wheat country and you know a local farmer and you can get it straight from the farmer, like for example, 4 Generations Organic Farms is based in Oklahoma. They're in Alva, Oklahoma. And while you can order them online, if you actually go to their farm, to their store, it's like 50% off, if you're buying in the store. So if you happen to be close to a farmer, definitely reach out to your wheat farmers or whatever grain farmer it is, because you can possibly save money there. Unfortunately, I'm in Florida, no wheat farms here. That is not an option for me. Which leads to tip number 3, is that there are more whole grains to remember than just wheat. A huge one, and we all know it, brown rice. Okay, now I do recommend brown rice. It is far more nutritious than white rice for obvious reasons. So I do recommend brown rice. And good news is you can find that in like every single grocery store. I'm pretty sure you can even find it at Dollar General, maybe even the Dollar Tree, those type of places. But brown rice is an excellent grain, and it is still a whole grain. Now you're getting different nutrients than you do with, say, wheat or quinoa or these other type of whole grains, but it still is a good whole grain that still gives you some fiber, some nutrients, and all those good health benefits. And rice is so cheap. It is easily, you can put it in soups, you can serve it as a side. I mean, so many things like that. So don't think that you're just limited to wheat, especially those of y'all who may need to remain gluten-free or you choose to remain gluten-free. There's still so many whole grains that are naturally gluten-free, like brown rice. And the thing with brown rice and quinoa and those type of grains is you don't need a grain mill in order to still consume real whole grains. Now, tip number 4, this is a big one, is don't forget about the humble bean, our legumes. Beans are awesome. Now, to really save on the budget, you need to buy dried beans. You can buy them in bulk. I've seen them in 25-pound bags, say at Sam's Club, like your black beans, your pinto beans, those type of things. Beans are wonderful. Legumes provide a whole different type of, a lot of nutrient benefits. So they're very healthy for you. I mean, there's a reason why you say, like, I've been living on beans and rice. Because it is cheap. It is cheap. You pair beans and rice, you have a good whole meal there. Bonus, if you also can include some bread that is made with 100% freshly milled wheat. But there are so many dishes that you can do with beans and rice. Other tips for beans, it's a great way to stretch out any meat that you may have. So for example, for chili, which I have a recipe for you up here. For chili, meat is expensive. So back off on the meat, increase your beans. And it's still a very delicious chili recipe. I actually did a video, I'll link it up here and down below, where I showed y'all 3 easy bean recipes using dried beans. That was the main dish for your meal. And they are not only stupid easy, but they are also really good. So I do recommend checking out that video as well if you need some ideas of how to be using dried beans. Another thing about beans is they contain fiber and they're a good source of protein. So they're a good protein without buying meat. Definitely a cheaper source of protein than expensive meat. But they also contain great fiber that keeps you full and satiated for longer. All right, tip number 5. And this one, maybe you agree with, maybe disagree with, but I highly recommend that you learn to cook authentic Mexican food. All right, hear me out. So did you know that Mexican food is the only type of food that is actually on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity? They were recognized in 2010 for its rich cultural traditions centered on corn, beans, and chili peppers. So Mexican food is, you know how you have your World Heritage sites where they basically gave that award to a type of food. I mean, that's how good it is. But I'm telling you, Mexican food, authentic Mexican food, surprisingly, it is cheap. I mean, hello, beans, rice. I mean, if you've ever been to a Mexican restaurant, what do they always serve with whatever you're getting? Beans and rice, because it is cheap. But a lot of it uses real whole food ingredients. So like your salsas are made with your tomatoes, your onions, garlic. These are kind of all cheaper produce that's also much easier to find. And the flavors are absolutely incredible with authentic Mexican food. There are so many flavors with that, and it can really elevate a simple meal, say with beans and rice. It can just to have good flavors with that, it's really going to elevate it. And the better it tastes, you're going to just enjoy your food more, no matter how cheap it costs you to make it. Now, really, I will say, not to exclude my other Latino countries, but really, I think any Latino food is pretty good because many of them have like a lot of beans and rice. I mainly just especially say Mexican food because of them being recognized by UNESCO, and especially here in the United States, we're a little bit more familiar with Mexican food. Now, here's the bonus tip that I mentioned, something that you really need to think about. And I think ultimately, when it comes to eating healthy on a budget, you need to change your mindset. And I know people say this all the time when they say, well, I can't afford this. Well, have you priced cancer lately? Or these type of diseases, have you priced that lately? And I understand when you're on such a tight budget and you hear that, you're like, yeah, but I can only do so much, okay? And I get it, but I think there's also needs to be a mentality shift. And that means of maybe learning new skills. Maybe you just need to learn better ways of cooking very cheaply. For example, learning that you buy one whole chicken instead of always buying like chicken breast or the chicken thighs. Maybe you buy a whole chicken, you roast that, you have a roast chicken, then you take the bones and the leftover chicken, you make a stock, and then you make a soup from that. And you're able to really help that one whole chicken, which is generally cheaper than when you buy the cut pieces. You then make several meals from that. And also, it is true. I mean, when you are eating a better diet, that means you are hopefully, and should be, when you're eating real food, it is much better than eating the highly processed garbage that does cause health issues in your body. So if you're able to actually eat real whole food, and this is the beauty of real whole grains, is because I do believe that they are more bang for your buck. Grains in and of itself are cheaper, but real whole grains gives you far more nutrients and health benefits. And with that, I've seen so many testimonies from people who have started milling their own grains, baking bread at home, things like that, that their blood pressure got better. They're diabetics and they can eat bread without it spiking their blood sugar. People's cholesterol got better. Just overall, their health got better. And if you're more healthy, that means less doctor visits. That means less money that you're paying for medications, more money in your pocket. All right, so there you go, y'all. Hopefully this encouraged you, got your brain thinking a little bit about ways to incorporate real whole grains in your diet, but also getting you to think about how you can actually save money and stretch those dollars out with the good real whole grains that God has given us. You don't have to go on carnivore or keto or any of those really expensive diets in order to get your health back. You can just be doing what people have been doing for thousands of years, which is eating real whole grains and a balanced diet. And you might be surprised at the results. And if you are looking for an easy, simple sandwich bread using 100% freshly milled wheat, I've got you covered. That video is up here. And as always, if you have any questions or have any tips of your own, ways that you like to save money in the grocery store, let us know in the comments below. And as always, I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.